For 5 centuries, one ebook has haunted rulers, terrified the church, and been whispered approximately in the halls of power, banned from pulpits, burned in public squares, but secretly studied by kings, generals, and CEO. This isn't a e-book approximately kindness. It isn't always a book about morality. It's miles something a long way greater risky a guide for victory. Niccolo Machiavelli's The Prince doesn't flatter human nature, it exposes it. It doesn't promise justice, it promises survival. Its pages have fashioned wars, toppled kingdoms, and built empires from Renaissance courts to Silicon Valley boardrooms. With the aid of the end of this video, you gain it just understand why it become called the Satan's Handbook. You'll recognize why its lessons still seduce all people who dares to guide. The query is now not whether or not the prince is risky, however whether you're ready to apply it. To understand the prince, you first need to understand the person who wrote it. Niccolo Machiavelli. Born in 1469 in Florence, Italy, he grew up in a town that became each a jewel of the Renaissance and a battlefield of politics. Florence becomes surrounded by using powerful opponents, torn via inner factions, and constantly at hazard of invasion. It turned into a world in which one incorrect pass could cost you your throne, your freedom, or your existence. Machiavelli rose to prominence as a diplomat and civil servant. For over a decade, he negotiated with kings, popes, and mercenary generals. He witnessed firsthand the brutal chess sport of Italian politics. He noticed alliances made inside the morning and damaged by means of dusk. He saw mercy repaid with betrayal and weak spot punished with destruction. And via it all, he studied the actions of folks that managed now not just to gain power, but to keep it. However, Machiavelli's fortunes turned. Whilst the effective Medici-owned family regained control of Florence, Machiavelli was accused of conspiracy. He became arrested, tortured, and exiled. Stripped of his role, he retreated to his farm outdoor the city. It became there, in disgrace and desperation, that he wrote The Prince. He devoted it to the very rulers who had cast him apart, hoping his insights would restore him to desire. What emerged was not a e-book approximately morality or beliefs. It became a book approximately reality, approximately the sector as it is, no longer as we want it to be. The Prince is a manual for survival in a dangerous global, distilled from blood, betrayal, and experience. And its trainings still echo via the corridors of electricity these days. At the heart of Machiavelli's vision is the struggle among fortune and virtue. Fortune, he stated, is sort of a raging river, unpredictable, regularly negative, and past human manipulate. But virtue, a ruler's boldness, ability, and strength of will, can form fortune, building dikes and channels to grasp its pressure. Weak rulers flow helplessly with the present day, but strong rulers bend it to their gain. Machiavelli's greatest instance was Cesare Borgia, the Duke of Valentinois. Borgia changed into ruthless, ambitious, and charismatic. With the backing of his effective father, Pope Alexander VI, he carved out a country in central Italy via a blend of cunning international relations and calculated violence. He relied on guys in electricity, removed competitors, and used worry to impose order. Whilst one of his governors grew hated for immoderate cruelty, Borgia staged a public execution, making himself seem merciful whilst strengthening his grip. For Machiavelli, Borgia embodied an appropriate stability of ferocity and intelligence. But Machiavelli also warned that even the boldest ruler must adapt. Fortune may choose the bold, however, it punishes hesitation. A leader who waits for the appropriate second often misses it completely. The upward push to strength requires decisive action, even when risks are high. Possibilities hardly ever knock twice, and when they do, they vanish as quickly as they appear. A prince should be ready to strike before opponents even sense the hole. To postpone is to surrender power to a person else's ambition. The lesson is clear. Power doesn't come to folks that dream, it involves folks who act. Fortune may additionally open the door, however handiest Virtù can stroll through it. And once you seize energy, the real assignment starts a way to preserve it. That leads us to one of the most well-known dilemmas in all of political idea. Is it better for a ruler to be cherished or to be feared? Few questions in management are as undying or as debatable as Machiavelli's. Is it better to be cherished or to be feared? His answer becomes blunt. If you cannot be each, it's far some distance more secure to be feared. Why? Because love is voluntary, fragile, and conditional. People may love a leader nowadays and abandon them the following day, swayed through fear, envy, or self-hobby. Worry, however, is dependable. It creates obstacles human beings dare now not move. Worry makes betrayal pricey. Worry anchors authority while loyalty wavers. But here's the nuance. Machiavelli did not rejoice cruelty for its very own sake. He warned that fear ought to never slide into hatred. A hated ruler is doomed. As soon as hatred units in, conspiracies multiply, revolt brews, or even the maximum powerful prince falls. The key is balance to command recognized through firmness, but not to initiate vengeance through savagery. Machiavelli illustrated this with actual world examples. Cesare Borgia was feared but widespread for his decisiveness. His energy persevered so long as he balanced severity with strategy. Then again, rulers who became despised like tyrants who taxed excessively, humiliated their people, or allowed unchecked cruelty, finally faced violent downfalls. Worry without hatred is electricity. Worry with hatred is suicide. Cutting-edge parallels are easy to look. Dictators who lean too far into terror fall apart in extraordinary revolutions. Enterprise leaders who rule through intimidation burn out their groups and lose loyalty. However, leaders who set firm requirements, enforce field, and preserve recognize at the same time as keeping off outright cruelty frequently achieve each balance and results. Machiavelli's lesson is not about embracing evil. It's about recognizing a hard reality. Human loyalty is fickle. However, human warning is regular. A ruler who is predicated only on love guidelines on transferring sands. A ruler who inspires worry without cruelty builds a fortress that lasts. So while confronted with the quandary of fear as opposed to love, Machiavelli's answer stays as unsettling as it is sensible. Within the contest for energy, fear is the safer bet. The project is wielding it without crossing into hatred. Machiavelli understood something current politicians, CEO, and influencers still exercise. Appearances depend more than truth. A ruler does now not want to be simply merciful, devoted, or simply, but he ought to appear like. Picture is electricity, and phantasm is frequently more potent than reality. Within The Prince, Machiavelli explains that humans judge extra with their eyes than with their arms. They see how a leader affords himself, no longer the hidden motives behind the curtain. A ruler who initiative's distinctive feature gains accept as true with, even if his selections are ruthless. To survive, leaders need to grasp the artwork of overall performance. Symbols, ceremonies, spiritual devotion, even myths, all of these cloak harsh realities with comforting appearances. A prince may additionally damage guarantees while important, but he need to constantly appear honorable whilst doing so. Machiavelli points to examples like Pope Alexander VI, who deceived with ease, swearing oaths he in no way intended to hold. Yet his capability to seem religious and sincere allowed him to reinforce his circle of relatives as power. In politics, belief became no longer only a tool, it was the battlefield itself. This lesson echoes today. Cutting-edge leaders degree photograph ops, craft slogans, and build non-public manufacturers. Organizations polish public pictures even while making difficult, unpopular selections behind closed doorways. Optics guide public religion some distance extra than fact. The show, as Machiavelli expected, will become the reality humans believe. However, illusion on my own is not sufficient. A pace-setter who handiest pretends, without the strength to enforce authority, risks disintegrate. Appearances can win hearts temporarily, but most effective decisive motion continues strength comfortable. That's why Machiavelli confused that rulers ought to combine picture with substance, display distinctive feature, however wield ruthlessness when survival demands it. Ultimately, Machiavelli's perception is unsettling, however simple. Humans are guided extra by using tales, symbols, and appearances than via records. Leaders who understand this control now not just armies, however imaginations. And in politics, as in commercial enterprise, media, or way of life, controlling imagination is the highest shape of electricity. Next, we'll explore how Machiavelli addressed the darker tools of management, cruelty, advisors, and the raw power which could make or spoil a ruler. Machiavelli's lesson on cruelty isn't approximately medieval bloodshed, it's approximately how leaders today handle hard decisions. He argued that after tough moves are vital, they have to be decisive, clear, and restrained. Dragging out painful measures best deepens resentment. In exercise, this might appear to be a CEO making layoffs, in place of prolonging uncertainty for months. One company strike, then a period of rebuilding, is more humane and more effective than constant cuts. The same principle applies to discipline. A supervisor whose shall-we issues linger creates chaos. One that addresses them firmly and early restores stability. Cruelty nicely used. Inside the modern day feel manner, having the braveness to make unpopular but essential picks, and then shifting forward to heal and grow. Machiavelli additionally warned about reliance on mercenaries. In his time, it intended hired squaddies. These days, it would imply overdependence on contractors, outside experts, or transient alliances. Outsiders can be beneficial, however, if they preserve the middle of your operation, you are prone. Robust leaders build teams which might be loyal, professional, and aligned with their project. Electricity comes from making an investment to your very own human beings, no longer renting it from others. And then there are advisors. Machiavelli carewarned that a leader must listen to counsel, but never give up very last judgment. Too many voices purpose paralysis, even as blind agree within flattery results in disaster. The current version, leaders who surround themselves only with sure men lose angle, even as individuals who invite honesty, however maintain authority, make sharper decisions. In nowadays' world, whether or not strolling an enterprise, main emotion, or handling a crew, the balance stays the same. Act decisively while difficult measures are required, construct electricity from within, and are seeking suggest without surrendering control. Those aren't classes approximately cruelty within the antique feel. They're approximately clarity, resilience, and independence. A frontrunner who embodies these standards earns respect, maintains order, and builds an agency strong sufficient to endure setbacks and shifts in fortune. Music, irrespective of how powerful a ruler may additionally seem, fortune always has the final word. Machiavelli as compared fortune to a raging river, calm at times. However, whilst it floods, it sweeps away bushes, bridges, and even complete cities. Susceptible rulers, unprepared for exchange, are destroyed whilst the modern day shifts. Sturdy rulers, but, are people who build dams and channels lengthy earlier than the water's upward push. In different words, fortune cannot be managed, but it could be organized for. For Machiavelli, adaptability was the very best shape of power. A prince who clings to antique methods when the arena adjustments will subsequently disintegrate. The techniques that once introduced success might also later carry smash if carried out blindly. Actual rulers take into account that survival relies upon flexibility, the potential to behave boldly, whilst instances call for boldness, and cautiously, while caution is the wiser route. History offers countless evidence of this lesson. States that didn't modernize their armies or economies fell to folks that adapted. Monarchs who refused to adjust their rule to new political realities were overthrown. Even in modern times, corporations that ignore converting markets or technologies are swept aside via competitors who embody innovation. Fortune rewards people who evolve. Machiavelli additionally determined that fortune has a tendency to prefer the formidable, but boldness without calculation ends in recklessness. To him, the most success rulers had been those who struck decisively when possibility appeared, but who additionally recognized while to alternate route as the winds shifted. This stability between daring and adaptability described what he called true virtue. The lesson here is sobering. No reign, no empire, no strength is permanent. Fortune usually turns, and most effective folks that count on its floods live on the storm. A prince who prepares for alternate, who adapts with the times in preference to resisting them, can survive the chaos. The ones who fail to do so are swept into the forgotten pages of history. Machiavelli never lived to look his book embraced. For the duration of his lifetime, the prince became dismissed, condemned, even branded heretical. Yet, over the centuries, it have become one of the most influential works on politics ever written. His name itself became an adjective, Machiavellian, frequently used as a synonym for manipulation or ruthless, foxy. However, the reality is extra complex. Machiavelli wasn't advocating evil for its own sake. He was describing power as it certainly operates, stripped of illusions. He believed stability, energy, and survival mattered more than lofty ideals that collapsed under strain. In his eyes, a frontrunner who pretended the arena changed into gentle doomed their humans. A pace-setter who understood its harshness ought to protect them. These days, the prince nevertheless resonates because it captures something undying, approximately human nature. Whether in politics, enterprise, or personal life, power dynamics shape each dating. We nevertheless debate the identical questions he raised. Have to leaders' intention to be cherished or feared? Should appearances outweigh truth? Need to morality ever give way to necessity? The legacy of the prince is no longer a call to cruelty, however a name to clarity. It reminds us that leadership is not easy, and that power, as soon as taken, demands vigilance. 500 years later, Machiavelli's task nonetheless stands. If the crown were placed for your fingers, could you select morality or power? If you found this journey through the prince establishing, consider how a lot greater theirs to uncover approximately the hidden regulations of electricity. Don't just stop right here. Electricity is a language, and Machiavelli Simplest wrote the primary chapter. Subscribe for more deep dives into the timeless strategies of rulers, thinkers, and masterminds who fashioned records. Drop a remark together with your mind. Might you rather be loved or feared? And if this video gave you a new angle, percentage it due to the fact understanding, like power, is meant to spread.